Little town here in Georgia. Another peacock. Trains coming through town, and that's the Wink Wink movie theater. Oh, Dalton City Hall. City Hall. 27th, 1864, after a 5-hour march, the Federals, with about 14,000 men, reached the vicinity of Pickett's Mill. Waiting there were 10,000 Confederates. The Union soldiers had struggled through rugged terrain and deep ravines, which led to confusion and exhaust even before the attack began. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they attacked. Daybreak found the Confederates still in possession of the field. Federals lost 1,600 men, while the Confederates lost 500. The ground was described as covered with dead men.
So this is the one that Sherman wishes, it says afterwards that he wishes he had done differently.
We're at Pickett's Mill. There's a big ravine down here. It was a horrible, awful, bloody battle. People gave up their commissions because it was so horrible. And virtually no one's heard of it. It was so bad they swept it under the carpet. There's a viewing platform, I guess looking down into the ravine. Back in the big city, rush hour traffic. That's downtown Atlanta in the far distance. Okay, it's not quite downtown, but we'll see how long it takes to get there. Atlanta history museums cover 33 acres. We only visited this one building. The History Museum, and this is Turning Point, the American Civil War. Not easy. We'll start with Lincoln getting elected. This is 1862. 220,000 soldiers died in the first 18 months of the war. And they started the draft, tried to get Britain and France to join the war, which they didn't do. 62, Lincoln declared the North was fighting to free Southern slaves. A lot of people, including those in the Army, said, huh? They were not happy about that. The worst killer in the war was disease. Chronic diarrhea, lack of good water, not much in the way of medicine. And I learned yesterday that after the war, a lot of the surgeons became carpenters because of their skill using saws. Exhibit on the sailor's job. They had to enforce a blockade to keep getting to the south. 130,000 men served in the Navy. Their job was to blockade southern seaports, gain control of rivers, so northern ships could carry invading armies deep into Confederate territory. Turning point was 1863. Decisive victories at Vicksburg, Gettysburg, and Chattanooga. Confederacy, the war was stronger both north and south. In 1863, the Confederates held Richmond. The Union captured Vicksburg, opened the Mississippi River. They captured Chattanooga, so they got control of the Tennessee River. Confederate forces held Charleston and recaptured Galveston. Confederate offensive into Pennsylvania failed at Gettysburg, and the blockade tightened, and 360,000 soldiers were dead. This is titled A Time of Anguish, which happened all over the North and South. The defense line in part of Atlanta in October of 1864 shows how they built entrenchments. This is prior to World War I, but some of the same strategy was used later in Europe. Supplies were always an issue both north and south. It says an army of 100,000 men consumed 600 tons of supplies every day. Now, the horses took a whole bunch of that. 1864, May and June, Grant failed to capture Richmond. In August, Admiral Farragut captured Mobile Bay in Alabama. September, Sherman's army captured Atlanta. The Union Army evacuated all Atlanta civilians. September to December, Southern morale collapsed. And in November, Lincoln won re-election. Of course, the states that seceded were unable to vote. In December, the Union forces destroyed the Confederate Army that had defended Atlanta, and Sherman took his march to the sea and he destroyed Southern food supply all along the way. This is the burned remains of a Confederate munitions train and the Atlanta rolling mill in October of '64. The rolling mill was one of only 2 manufacturers in the South capable of making railroad track. Information, but this is either burned out Atlanta or burned out Richmond. 670,000 Americans died in the Civil War, many more by disease than by military action. 1865 to 1880, Reconstruction. 4 million African Americans were freed. The South was in ruins. Cities and farms were destroyed. Almost a quarter of all Southern white men were dead. Southern take on the Civil War. They claimed they won a moral victory. Northerners rejected this view. By 1900, white Americans had a different set of beliefs. Reconciliation celebrated the valor of white soldiers on both sides while defining the war as a tragic misunderstanding. We had battle losses in Manassas, Shiloh, Antietam, Gettysburg, Vicksburg, Chickamauga, the Wilderness, Petersburg, Atlanta. There were hard times after the war. Mississippian culture in the 1500s. They did have some mounds, and then they built kind of mud walls with leaves and stuff on top. And over time, they've just kind of disintegrated. We didn't even know they were there for a long time. Kind of a place of worship and celebration, different events during the year. I have a Cherokee household in the new American Republic. Many Indians took on the ways of the white man, integrated into society, but Trail of Tears, they were kicked out anyway. This is a Cherokee council house in 1817. It's been rebuilt, but the Indians met there and they had a very democratic form of government. Cherokee Indian, he was chief of his local group. He led them from 1801 till his death in 1811. The treaty in 1835 provided for an exchange of southeastern Cherokee homeland for a large tract of land in the Indian Territory and $5 million. Here's a mural showing the Indians as they headed from the southeast U.S. to pretty much Oklahoma Territory.